Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me and having Emily. My name is Jeannette Lutter-Gardella, and I am at the Kroening Nature Center, the one nature center in the Minneapolis Parks system. It is located in North Mississippi Regional Park. I also want to say if people have questions, please feel free to sort of raise your hand and interrupt me. It's just some very simple slides, and I don't want to presume anything. I don't want to presume that you don't in terms of programming or anything else. I just sort of will tell the story of how this came to be. So coming into the Kroening Nature Center, the exhibit had been redone and it had been closed during that time, and it was set to reopen, and then COVID. So as everyone experienced that, and then as I was there, we're on the very north tip of the city of Minneapolis, and we're this long regional this park that is a long strip along the Mississippi River, and we're cut off by the highway 94. And it was really the intention of the park to begin to sort of think about how do we do a better job of serving those who are underrepresented or underserved over the many years that the park has been, well, it's been in existence as long as the city, if not longer. And so how do we do that? How do we engage the community that's right by us as a regional park? Many people come through the park, but many people didn't know that there was a nature center and that it was programmed by the city of Minneapolis. So it was really, it's a collaboration between naturalists and artists. And then I'm going to just now kind of go to my next slide here. And we talk about it as culturally relevant, accessible, and welcoming. And that's because it's co-designed. Like it's not necessarily, it is part of, I have to move my little thing to get to here we go. Move the slide. It's co-designed really from the point of view of those who are of the North Side and who are artists. So it got started by really what I say, inviting the conversation. I knew someone who knew someone, and we sort of knew people in the periphery, and I just started to make calls. I started to send out emails and saying, hi, this is who I am. This is where I'm at. Would you like to come in and talk with us and see what might be possible? So this is a picture of, this is Amake Kubate. She is a longtime Northside resident. She is an artist. She has an organization called Yo Mama's House, and she does a lot of things with children and parents. She was an early childhood educator herself. She's pretty well known in the Twin Cities. This was one of our programs. So you're going to see to the side, there's looks like it's a part of a tree. She wanted to have a spooky tree. We went out and we cut some buckthorn in the park, and we put it in a bucket with some clay. She had the children hang their fears on the trees, and she read a story, and this was called Who Comes Out at Night, to talk about sort of nighttime things. And we did a hike, a full moon hike with the naturalist to sort of be outside. So she's one of the main artists. She was the person that I reached out to. And then she pulled in other artists that she knew, other people that were from the North Side, and we began. And then what it was is that conversation between the naturalists and the artist. What are the intersections? What do you bring? What do the naturalists bring? What would bring in families? And we asked them to sort of be both the artists and ambassadors. And then it became important for us to find that time for that collaboration. So in the picture where you see some fairy wings, the person in the middle is Phyllis Chatham. And she does consider herself to be a fairy and a mermaid, that for her, nature is a place of magic and of healing. And she wants children to see themselves represented because she didn't always see it when she was a child. So we have a summer camp called Woodland Fairy Tales. Thank you, Emily. And that's and that was a week, and she came in. And so it was really moving into doing nature crafts and stories and having them have her as sort of this role model. In the other picture, that is Phyllis again. And as much as I did not want her to put the ocean sort of shower curtain you can see in our big window, she she insisted. We created a program with her called Mississippi Mermaid Magic. And so she told tales of how she grew up and how she saw herself as a mermaid. And then there's a person sitting with a mask that is Cedar Jones, a naturalist. Cedar then sort of launched into sort of really the real, we call it the real tales and scales of the Mississippi River and what actually lives in the river right by us, and took families out for some to be by the river. And then we also have some of our own educational animals that were part of that program. So it's dedicating the time for collaboration, having naturalists feel comfortable, right? That they can share that space and what that's going to look like. And then I talk about what I call internal and external partners. So you can see the external partner, that is someone from the Raptor Center, and bringing in some of the owls. And that was part of, again, who comes out at night. In one of the other classrooms, we sort of did the classic owl pellets and whatnot. But they were really, when we first applied, we had to get on their schedule, but then they were really interested in supporting us and more tailoring to what we were trying to do, because they too wanted to reach the same audience. And then I talk about external partners. It's still or internal partners. The photo that you see with the mom and the two kids and the little and the monarch there, that's actually at J.D. Rivers Children's Garden. So it's at different sites, not just at Kroening, trying to expand it and trying to bring families into all the different various programs and places that we have in the park, and having them feel welcome, again, that it's accessible. This is a place for you. So that was a great collaboration. It continues. We work with JD, that's part of the parks. They have an orchard and a CSA, and bringing those families in was really important. So identifying those external and internal partnerships. I'm going to see if I can play this. It's just a little video. This is How Do You Like Them Apples? This is again from that same day. They got to pick the apples and now do a little try to press it, and they're working together to do that. So there's not much else other than that. I'll keep moving on. One of the things that, and this is evolving, just so everybody knows, defining roles and responsibility, both for us as the Nature Center, and what is my role as sort of the administrator creating the events, and then what is the role of the artist? Because one of the things that I said at the beginning, and is still true, how do we make sure that the community knows that they're welcome, that this is a place for them? And the artists have been really clear about not wanting it to sound like there's a deficit and we're going to fill the hole, but about reestablishing and reinvigorating anyone's connection to that it belongs to everybody. So we've asked the artists to also be ambassadors. We're sort of defining that you are of the community, right? You are the community. And how do you then sort of be that person that starts to bring more and more people in? So what is your role outside of the event to sort of promote the event, talk about it, and bring others in? And this is Phyllis here. This is one of her sort of craft, making these spiders. Phyllis and Phyllis is wonderful, but given that it is Black to Nature and it is a nature center, we've had to, I hold the line on plastic bits with her. she's been good about that, but it's still something we have to, like, she and I are working on it. No glitter. That's what I've said to her. We're not doing glitter. So promote and to be patient. So we're very fortunate in our park system. There is a graphics person and a communications department. So as long as I give them enough heads up, they can help me create these flyers, make it as easy as possible. We don't require registration. We're hoping for it, but we don't. So it's been hard to sometimes plan. We've had as little as 20 and as much as 60 plus people show up. And it's just, and again, it's growing and it's evolving, and some of the artists are stepping away and other artists are coming in. And that's our Black to Nature as of now.
Does anyone have questions or comments they want to ask? How long ago did you start this program, or the collaboration, I guess, with your artists and your naturalists?
Oh, good question. Emily, when did I start? I like 20.
You
So
started in the fall of 21.
21.
So probably was it the next fall that was the first?
Actually, I
or
think
is
it was
the
the
spring?
summer that it was the first one was with the design with 3 artists, one who has since passed away. She was a beloved community member. It was called Trees and Community, and that happened in June. So we've been doing, so we sort of have a seasonal cycle that we kind of work through. And we try to do both daytime and some evening events. So 2022, I think the summer of 2022, that first June, somewhere around solstice.
And then do you have a set number of programs you offer each month or each week, or does it kind of change depending on what season you're in?
It's mostly seasonal because so this began, again, very fortunate within the park. There is some internal grant money for innovative programming. And so for the last 2 years, I've been able to sort of, access that. And so because the naturalists are already on staff, right, that time is somewhat covered. And then it's really paying the artists for their planning time, some of the materials, and then their actual being at that event and providing sort of their cultural and artistic talents and whatnot. But it is evolving. So now we're creating a budget for it. We'll sort of, what is that going to look like in terms of each event and how many events that we can have in a year. So that's exciting. I'm going to submit that pretty soon, a couple of versions of what it could look like. So in the past, sometimes there's been multiple like 2 artists at a time. It's likely that it will be not as many artists per event, but maybe more events per year.
Because Jeannette, has it been one per season, or does it kind of vary depending on the themes that emerge?
Because it depends on a lot of planning and getting them all together. And some of them have less mobility and so, Zoom and Teams and whatnot. So it's been mostly by season because, again, it was a grant and I was trying to stretch it out. And so the idea now is to be able to do, so we've done, and then they wanted to do a Kwanzaa. And so, but we had this other one called Science and Beauty of Snow. So we were able to sort of move some things around to do Kwanzaa early in December before, and then because we run our camps and they're all busy with their families and other things, and then move Science and Beauty of Snow into January, and then we didn't really have snow, so that got pushed into February. And then we had something planned for February, which was the first up north Mardi Gras, since we're on the Mississippi. And so it's moved a lot, right? It's still evolving, honestly, but the idea would be to really think about it from a seasonal perspective. Summer's busy for us, so it's harder to do more, but we're being asked. Other external, like the library has asked us. There's the Phyllis Wheatley Community Center, even within our own park system. And so it's sort of like, of course, we'd love for you to contact these artists. We'd love for you to, give them work. But we also, if you want it to be a Black to Nature, it has a naturalist component that takes some planning and collaboration. And so it's like, where does that budget come from? So those are the parts and pieces, but it's evolving. It's worth it. I would say it does take time to sort of, bring these people together that and I'm going to be honest, not everyone is feels comfortable. So it takes that time. It's about building relationships, both with the artists and then with that audience, and then, between the naturalists and the artists as well. So
Sarah, did you have something to say?
Yeah, let's see if I can remember how to unraise my hand. There we go. Just gonna say, first of all, thank you so much for sharing about this program. This is awesome to see how you're working with the artists.
Mm.
Now I can assume that, but I wanted to hear from you. Are you seeing that there's families or folks coming that maybe didn't use the parks before?
Yes.
I mean, like it's a new way of getting folks to come because it's not necessarily a parks program. I mean, there's a nature component, but that artist piece is really exciting to think that that might be drawing new families into the park.
I think it is, yes, we know that it is. And then we see some families that are repeating, like they're coming because it's a Black to Nature event. We are, again, fortunate. There is a group within the park called the Data Insight Team. So I'm going to start working with them about some better tracking because we don't have the registration. And we're pretty busy on those days when people are, everyone's sort of assigned to do different things. We're trying to capture people's contact information. We're trying to get, put them on a list to get things back out to them. But we'd like to sort of do some evaluation and feedback as well. So that's on the horizon for us. But the art and nature in general, even if it's not under the umbrella of Black to Nature, is very popular.
Jeannette, I think another component too, as you were going through your slides, you mentioned a few times about this type of program being like an inviting program and a program saying that, this is a space for you, and that feeling maybe wasn't, the park is very separated from the community because of the freeway and some other busy roads.
Yeah.
And so trying to create that narrative of this is a place for you and having these local artists as kind of pillars in their community was a major tie-in piece that's that community component. Like I almost think it's less about the art and more about them as like strong community members. And so that made a bridging between the physical park space and the community and saying, yep, this is a place for us and we can find ownership here.
Right. And because they're very well known as artists, right? People in the community, they might be, Phyllis had been in the school system for years as like a cultural liaison. She had worked in different, Amake herself. So, it's that kind of, like I said, it's inviting the conversation and finding those connections and then, building from there. And that's that initiation, right? And I think as a, as a park, right, as an organization, if this is what we want to do, then it's incumbent upon us to do that outreach and build that relationship and see where you go from there. And there's no set, it looks different because each of the artists are bringing different things and sometimes they don't get along. I mean, it just happens, they all know each other, but that doesn't mean that they've all worked together before. So how that looks too, you have to just be, open to that. Yeah.
How did you originally find your artists to work with you with this collab?
So, I knew someone who knew someone, and it's really networking, right? I peripherally knew Amake, right? I had known other people that knew her. So I just sort of, again, you just take it in hand and you just do that. You reach out, right? You get a phone number, you get an email, you introduce yourself, see what comes back. Right. And I was also, we're fortunate there's an organization called Compass, COMPAS, and it has a roster of artists, and there are many artists of color that come into schools and do residencies and whatnot. But like I said, I was really focusing on the North Side and those artists who are North Side artists who would have connections to bringing, not that it doesn't, we draw from other places, that's okay, but that's been the intention, right? Is to make sure that this North Side community knows that the Nature Center is right here, and that it's a resource for them. I mean, it's I don't have a, that's really what it is. You know, it's not much else. That's really what it is. And so someone has to decide that they're going to try that and do that. So, yeah.
Do we have any other questions or comments from anybody? So there's a lot of great information. I like all the fun names that you had for the programs as well. Kind of got me thinking like, what could we be doing? And it's so much marketing is always such a big part of it too, of finding what name is going to catch people, what type of descriptions that you can reach the group you're looking for, and just trying to get the word out.
It's so true. And that's been really fun between both the naturalists and artists. It's their language. It's not me. I'm there to like pull pieces together and do whatever, but they are doing that. And Black to Nature, Amaki Kubate is just really good with language. So she sort of came up with this sort of like reestablishing and what does that mean? But that Black to Nature, she just sort of popped that out one day and we all were like, okay, that's it, right? Is that what, do we feel like this is going to work? The part you have to sort of give over some percentage of your time to sort of allow that stuff to sort of emerge, and then whose strength is what, right? And what are they bringing to the table and how does that work? And then the naturalists also have to be able to have that time as well to develop what's that piece, how does that intersect? So
that's great. Do you have a website where you post what programs are coming up, or how do you get your word out?
So yes, there is a website, Kroening. So if you go to the Minneapolis Parks website and you look under park destinations, you would go to North Mississippi Regional Park. And then on that page, it would connect you to the Carl Kroening. Sometimes they'll pull up a Black to Nature, the park, like as a special event and give it like a little bit of more promotion. And then I keep a list. I've generated what I call my community partners list. And I grab as many emails and as many people, and I make sure that I send those flyers out to that list, who send it out to their network of people. So yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for all the information. This was, like I said, kind of inspiring of different ideas and ways that hopefully people on this call will be able to take back with them and keep reaching as many people as we can.
Yeah. And Megan, I'm happy if somebody has other questions or wants to talk or come up to the Nature Center, you're welcome to give them my contact information. So
great. I will pass that on if anybody asks. Well, thank you again for meeting with us. And this presentation will be online probably by the end of the week. We share it on our YouTube page. We have a list of all of our ParkRx speakers that we've had in the past. So we'll put it on there, and then I can send you that link as well. So if you want to share that with anyone, you can do that too.
Okay.
So
Megan, we still have Emily. She's going to share about one of their other programs.
Great. I didn't realize that. Well, awesome. Emily, we'll hand it over to you and you can build on this and tell us what else you're working on.
Yeah, that's fine. Compared to Black to Nature, which is a relatively new program, Drop-in Discoveries is a very old program that we've been doing with the Neighborhood Naturalist Program. So within the Minneapolis Parks Environmental Education, we have the Neighborhood Naturalists, and that's a team of naturalists. For a number of years, we've had 5, but it has fluctuated over time, that go out into park spaces. So whereas Jeannette is stationed at the Nature Center, which is in a regional park, the Neighborhood Naturalist Program doesn't have their own park space. We go out into park spaces to connect the people that are utilizing our many park resources across the Minneapolis park system, and connect them with nature with a neighborhood naturalist. So our program has been around since like 2000, and the drop-in discoveries have had a few different names over time, but the concept of what the program looks like has always been the same, which is a neighborhood naturalist goes into a park space to engage the people that are there already recreating in that park space. And perhaps over time, people become accustomed to when that naturalist is showing up. They're always there the same day of the week at the same time within a season. And so that creates some regularity, and then people maybe create a following around that naturalist. And it fluctuates in different park spaces exactly how people are interacting. So it's an hour-long program, and it's a drop-in program, so there's no registration. It's just engaging whoever is in the park for as long as they want to engage. So the naturalist comes prepared with kind of a theme, and if there are activities or arts or explorations or experiments, the naturalist has a lot of freedom to design what that hour-long drop-in is going to look like. They get guidance on what that could look like, and they get to shadow people when they start to see how other people run those programs. But the naturalist themselves actually has a lot of freedom in designing what that hour is going to look like. We try to be outside as much as possible, though in the winter, a lot of them do pivot to inside as we don't have the daylight in the after school hours. And of course, with the snow, it makes it hard to engage for a long period of time or do any hands-on tactile activities when you're wearing mittens. But we have expanded what they look like, and I can talk about that in a moment as well. But yeah, I mean, certainly for over 20 years, we've had neighborhood naturalists going into park spaces to meet people where they're at and offer them a way to connect with nature. And sometimes an engagement with a park patron will be a minute or 5 minutes. And sometimes we have very enthusiastic youth that want to hang out with the naturalist for the entire hour, even though they've maybe done all of the things that the naturalist brought a few times over. So yeah, engagement looks very different depending on the person engaging, and our naturalists are trained to just be accommodating in whatever those folks at the parks are looking for. Recently, we started kind of expanding what drop-in discoveries could look like and what audiences they're serving. So historically, it's just been an all ages drop-in program. So you show up and you engage whoever is there. And oftentimes they've been in that after school time frame on a weekday. So usually in the like 3 to 6 p.m. time frame. But we recognized this past fall that we actually have a number of school park sites. So parks that either share a border or share some outdoor resources like a playground space with a school, a Minneapolis public school. So those kids are having their recess at a Minneapolis park space. And so because those park spaces are where we do programming, we started offering those programs during recess at those school park sites. And that has been more successful than we kind of thought it was going to be. The original idea was we were going to do one in the in the like mid-morning. We started trying to do these more early childhood focused ones by going to a park space between like 9:30 and 11:30 in the morning to catch families with young children that hadn't started school yet. And we had been doing those at a number of parks, and then ended up trying one at a park that happened to be a school park site, and ended up catching all of these recess kids. And and they were so excited to engage with the naturalists that we ended up expanding what what sites we were visiting, because we were seeing multiple grades. We were seeing anywhere from 20 to 60 plus children in an hour at their recess. And so now we've been doing them since the fall, and we'll be continuing to do them through the end of the school year, because the kids are just really excited to see the naturalists. And so that has started to open more doors. Jeannette and I both partner with the school district in different ways, and different types of programming, as well as the community education portion of Minneapolis Public Schools as well. And so it seems that it's just another step towards potentially maybe being able to see them a little more formally in their school day instead of just during recess. Though it's been a really interesting thing to see how the children, it's a little novel at first, and then they warm up and they're like, are you going to be here every day? And we're like, no, just once a week. And how they're relating to the different scientific tools and nature items that we bring. So we'll bring biofacts, we'll bring things like microscopes or hand lenses, tools for them to use, the pocket microscopes, and how they're interacting with those tools has also shifted from them feeling like they were so precious that like they wanted to take them home and there was a lot of risk of losing those materials, to now they have grown familiar with those materials, and now it's just, oh, I can use these things and I can do this exploration, and I know that this person is coming back to do more nature explorations with me, and I don't have to feel like I need to hold it so tightly because I know they're coming back. And that's been a really cool and unexpected transition for those participants. And yeah, just that exposure to park spaces and nature connections that seemingly they weren't getting in other places, or perhaps we weren't even seeing them attending park spaces in other ways. So yeah, now our drop-in discoveries have morphed into like 3 different types, and we're now at the point where like we probably have to give them different names, because at this point we're calling them like early childhood DIDs, school site DIDs, and regular DIDs, and it's getting to be a little confusing. So we will probably be more formally expanding them in the summer or fall season with new names, but the same kind of stuff. We, even though they're drop-in programs and there's no opportunity to register for them, they're on our like program activities page in our registration system. Even though you can't register, it just says show up, it's free. You don't register, you just arrive. And then we make a number of flyers that we hand out at our programs to let people know where else we're going. If they want to kind of follow the naturalist around to different parks and go to numerous drop-in discoveries. We also, there's like over 100 parks in the Minneapolis system, and a little less than 50 of them have recreation centers. And so they have bulletin boards and staff and front desk staff that also help us get the word out. When we're outside, we let the front desk staff know that, hey, we're going to be over here at the picnic tables next to the playground. If anyone comes in asking, that's where the naturalist is. And yeah, I think the Neighborhood Naturalist Program has had a number of really kind of outstanding impacts in terms of like young children can see a naturalist wearing their park shirt and like carrying a bin with a cooler and know like that's a naturalist because they have stuff and an animal, and someone as young as 4 can just recognize someone as a naturalist and say that vocabulary, and that's a really cool and unique thing.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Just tell me to be quiet if I'm like asking too many questions. I love this program. I learned about the Neighborhood Naturalist Program. It was a few years before COVID, and then tried to do something similar in Rochester, but it did not go over because we were trying to recruit someone from within a specific neighborhood to like take the lead on it. We would fund them, we would train them, we would provide them with the resources. And there was somebody that stepped forward, and this was in a neighborhood that has a lot of Somali families. So there was a young woman who was in college, Somali woman, and she was very excited. But then we got into the summer. It was just, getting closer to kicking off. She went through the training, but then family things popped up and she wasn't able to commit. But that leads into my question of the diversification of staff. Like, you have neighborhood naturalists going into neighborhoods. Are any of them from within those neighborhoods, or how do you bring in like the different cultural backgrounds or even language barriers? And maybe that's I know Minneapolis is hugely diverse. Take Rochester probably times 1,000. So I'm just curious how you bring in diversity within your staff.
Yeah, so all of our neighborhood naturalist staff are actually part-time provisional staff. They're not full-time staff with the park board, which means that a lot of times they aren't in those positions for an extended period of time. Like I would say most people are in their position for 1 to 2 years, though we are maybe starting to see a trend of people sticking around a little bit longer now. And, yeah, the world is a different place, and nature programming and naturalist jobs are a slightly different climate than they were before COVID-19 happened. And we are working towards getting those positions to being full-time certified staff, or at least part-time certified staff. And so inevitably, with kind of a little bit of rotation of that team, like I said, we have 5 neighborhood naturalists on staff now that all work about 28 hours a week. And to some extent, because people aren't staying in that role to a very long time, then we naturally get kind of a broad range of people. But that's got limitations for community building when they're going out into these spaces to make connections with people. If the naturalist is only with us for a year or two, then the next person in that role has to start again to create that community. And that's been a really tricky thing for us when that's such a critical piece of their job and their work. I think also, luckily, in the city of Minneapolis being as diverse as it is, and the science and nature field being kind of as progressive as it is in some ways, it naturally brings us a pretty diverse group of applicants. And I think that has also shifted over time. So I think we used to get a lot more of, white females applying for these positions, and now it seems to be quite a bit more broad in who's applying for these jobs. And my coordinator and I have tried to build in those job descriptions some of those I don't know, value added kind of components with like professional development and skills building, and I think that can attract a certain group of people to apply for the position as well.
Sarah, may I piggyback a little bit? And sort of, because it's a question I think we're all asking ourselves, like, how do we, make sure that we're attracting candidates that are reflective of the communities that we are serving and want to serve? And Black to Nature is trying to do that, our camps, all of our programs, so that as kids, it's that developmental sort of looking at it from a developmental point of view, that if they can spend time in these spaces and feel comfortable and they feel good and they can play and explore, and then based on that, like some skills, right? Like I have all these curiosities and now what are the ways that I can find out more about these things and grow, that we have that, right, sort of responsibility to sort of, what does that pipeline look like, right? How do we get to these job fairs in the universities and other places where they're going into those fields, right? So and it's a long term sort of kind of commitment. It's those kinds of, but we have such an opportunity. And in terms of those, as a park system, as nature centers, museums, whatever you want to call us, those informal places where a lot of education takes place, a lot of very experiential, get your hands on, the concepts just start, popping with schools. They have a captive audience. It's exactly what Emily sees. It's what I see, right? Because we have some partnerships with our local Northside schools, and schools are hurting. There's a lot of cuts that are about to come down. And some of those staff will be available. And they might not have the exact background, but they definitely, if they've got the interest and they've got some of that other experience in terms of classrooms and kids and understanding, that's an opportunity right there. We had an experience, it's like Emily says, like these scientific tools. We have a naturalist, we have kids come to us, and then we can do some follow-up with our partner schools and go send a naturalist to the school. So we were in a 3rd grade classroom and we brought these microscopes. They're magic scopes, the whatever. That, as wonderful as this is also a little like disconcerting. The 3rd grade teachers, this was March, they said this is the best science the kids have had all year. It's not, if an elementary school teacher is a generalist, and if they don't have that background in their undergraduate before they become teachers, it's been documented, they're less likely. They don't spend the time, they don't feel comfortable, they don't think they can, and they have all these other priorities piled on. So again, we have such an opportunity to sort of fill that in. One, help them feel more comfortable. You don't have to have a science degree to be able to provide opportunities for, sparking curiosity, discovery, making connections, all of those kinds of things. So I just, and that is another way, again, it's long-term, giving kids these opportunities, and then they want to go into the field.
Jeannette, that made me think of 2 different things, actually. One, because we have 2 licensed teachers on neighborhood naturalist staff right now. And I think something that we often find ourselves saying is, the science content, nature content stuff can be taught.
Yeah.
And some of those other skill sets and comfort and connections to community and, how people are feeling about the way that they want to work with their community.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are much, much harder to teach and to develop within a staff. And so finding the people that have those things and cultivating their science knowledge and the skill sets they have around facilitating and experiential education is a lot easier to teach them. So that was the first thing that I thought of. The other thing was the park board has really focused a lot on youth employment initiatives.
That's
and
right.
Jeannette has a set of interns that are at Kroening each summer. And JD Rivers Children's Garden that Jeannette referenced earlier also has a youth crew. And then we have another partner crew that the park board and the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization run together. And each crew is a little different. And Jeannette's focus is a little bit more on like youth interaction and education and what does like being a naturalist look like? What does being a youth and even recreation to some extent worker look like? And then at the JD Rivers Children's Garden, it's maybe a little of that plus a little bit of like how do you take care of a garden? What do you need to know to manage this landscape that's a managed system? And then the partnership team with the MWMO is they're really heavy on like natural resource management and water quality initiatives that they can do by making improvements to the landscape. And they do have some of those education components, but it's less. And so those youth crews within environmental education are one of the ways that we try to bridge people from participants to youth workers to then being able to get one of these jobs after they're out of school, whether it's out of high school or out of college, because they've built up skills over time as a participant and then a youth worker. And they're kind of readily poised to step into a career type of position or a, you know, post-college early career job, because they've been doing these things for 5+ years, either as a participant or a youth worker. And that's really the type of thing of like kind of home growing in your neighborhood, the type of person that they're a participant and then they found a passion and they want to work with us and they want to continue working with us once they reach adulthood.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like along the lines of the health and well-being, because that's what our group is really like. We're trying to bring together the healthcare community and the parks community to kind of collaborate. And I know there's cool things going on all around the Twin Cities with the programs you're involved with, or maybe even outside of that within Minneapolis parks programming. Are there conversations taking place? Like I'm even thinking how you're working with schools. I know we haven't really seen a whole lot of it yet down here, but like how the school nurses or the counselors at the school, like, is there a way that folks are trying to have these conversations with parks folks, or hasn't that really kind of kicked off yet? Because I think this is still kind of a new Park RX, you know, is what, 6-7 years old in Minnesota right now. Does that make sense?
I mean,
that question?
I think, well, maybe. So you can let me know if I'm reading or understanding it correctly. I think that I don't know how much connecting has actually happened between the organizations, but I think there has been a lot more recognition and visibility on the health benefits of being outside and connecting with nature. And I think both of those organizations are promoting those ideas. Whether there's been a lot of partnership connection at this point, I don't know. There's nothing that stands out to me as something that I know is happening. But we work for a very large organization. So I would not be surprised if something is happening that we are not aware
Sarah,
of.
I can just say in my little teeny tiny corner of the world, part of some of the key people on my community partners list is, and particularly when working with the schools, is find your people. The principals are not always not that they're not your people, they're so overwhelmed, they're so big, but you got to find people in the building. And a lot of times it's your health and your nurse or the nursing assistant who's sometimes, or the cultural liaisons, the family connection people that have a connection into, say, the African American community or the Hmong community. So I have found that is a big tie for me, because they know a lot of families that would then benefit or are interested in, because they have all those interactions, has been important and beneficial. So it's just a very small, it's not a system-wide connection, right? It's just a point-to-point connection between the nature center and the schools that we're working with. But it is, I think, in the park system as a whole, there is a large strategic plan, comprehensive plan that has all these goals and where the park wants to be by, 2036. And health and wellness and having access is a huge piece of that. And what that's going to look like, because we're serving all the same. It's the same audience. It's the same community. what are our formal agreements? How do we think about this? How do we, we all have resources, so how do we make sure everybody has access? It's a great question. And even the libraries, like I said, the libraries are interested, and they can be great partners because they see lots of families as well. So, yeah.
Well, and lots of kids just using the computers at the library as a resource, whether it's for, doing things around school or if it's just playing games after school. Yeah, those libraries are a wonderful partner, and we work with them to varying degrees. I think we'd love to do more work with them as well. But
And I would say our biggest barrier, and this is, I don't think it's just us, we are uniquely have a barrier because of 94, is transportation. For a lot of these communities, getting to these places is a pretty big step. And so wanting to think about what's the funding, what does that look like? How do we support that? And then create those programming that meets, where they're at. So.
Yeah, I think in an urban environment, one of the main issues that we do encounter is like safe street access.
Yeah.
Like if a kid is biking or walking, they need a safe street route to get to a park. The park was designed in a brilliant way where everyone was supposed to be within a mile or like 10 blocks or something, walking distance to a neighborhood park, a green space, which is I'm very thankful that that's the way it is set up because it does improve access that much more. But now as we've, moved through the last 100+ years and have all of these cars and different transit, then there are certainly parks where they are not accessible to the families that live around them because the streets are not safe enough for them to travel on. And so how do we encourage those corridors and getting to the park spaces?
Yeah. One of our partnerships is with Minneapolis Public Schools ECFE. And the ECFE has the funding to give families transportation, sort of it's like an Uber type of something. And so families can come and go, and that helps. And then, again, the long haul is if you start when they're really young, right? And they're in these spaces. And what the preschool and parent educator talk about, it's like a transference of skills. So our naturalists, right, are able to show them, how do you do this outside? How does outdoor become that classroom? You don't have to be in here and read a book about falling leaves, the fall leaves, right? But being outside and doing that, and what's the gear, and how do you, like, when a kid is like, they're going to jump off the highest branch of a tree, and another kid that doesn't want to leave their mother's, the parent's side, that kind of thing. It's been really wonderful, but having that transportation has made it much more accessible for many more families to access that and have the opportunity to have this sort of naturalist-led ECFE. They call it Nature and Curiosity. And it's their one class that has the wait list because it's happening at the Nature Center as well, not just in a school. So, but it's the transportation that's been key to getting the diversity of families to be able to join.
That's been one of our barriers for Olmsted County parks is Oxbow Park is 14 miles away from Rochester, where a lot of people that we want to reach out to, but there's no public transportation to get you out to Oxbow. There's even troubles with Uber that people can Uber out, but then we don't have good cell service, so then they can't get a ride back to where they came from. So that's been a challenge. We're trying to see if we could get funding for, let's say, the first Saturday of the month, you meet here in Rochester, we'll bus you out to the park for X amount of time. So kind of trying to work around that as well and trying to be creative.
Yeah. See if you can access county money. I'm sure but that's what we are trying.
We are the county.
Yeah.
So finding the right funding from which department or this or that. Always the fun behind the scenes stuff. Do we have any other questions? I see we're almost at 11 o'clock here. If anyone has other questions or comments. Well, thank you again for both of you coming and the insight and just some ideas and connections and ways to reach out is always helpful. And it gets the gears in my head kind of thinking of what can we do and where can we reach out and continue to grow. So thank you for the work that you've done already, and we'll see what we can do from here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you. All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
Bye.
Bye.